Today we're going to talk about 7 foods that have 0 sugar and 0 carbohydrates. It is true that most of your foods that you're eating are probably loaded with carbs. Carbs have been responsible for most chronic disease. An average person in the U.S. consumes 67% of all their calories from carbohydrates. It's one of the fuels that feeds cancer. It's important to know what a carb is and what foods have it and what foods don't. I think the best way to start this out is to really simplify carbohydrates because people get confused. There are 3 types of carbohydrates. We have a sugar carbohydrate, another type of carbohydrate called fiber. The thing about fiber is the fiber doesn't raise the insulin level. It doesn't raise your blood sugar. So the real problem with chronic disease isn't necessarily the fiber. It's the sugar and something else. It's actually this right here, starch. This is the thing that a lot of people don't understand can be even worse than sugar because most people are consuming refined starch. They add a bunch of stuff in there. They might add bleach to it to take out the color and other preservatives because it's now more exposed to air. They have to preserve it. But there's actually 3 main bad things in the grains. Gluten, that's the protein part. Our bodies don't digest gluten. In fact, it's one of the only proteins that our bodies can't digest. Of course, you have the starch itself and sugar. The next point I want to bring up is the brain. You'll hear this all the time that your brain needs sugar because your brain could only run on glucose. Well, if that was the case, we would all be dead long ago. How do you explain all the carnivore people who seem to be doing very fine? They don't have very many problems. In fact, they're getting rid of a lot of problems. Yes, your brain can run on glucose, but it can also run on ketones that come from fat. There is no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. We can survive without carbohydrates. Why? Because our bodies can run on different fuels. They can run on ketones and fat, and they can run on glucose. What you have to realize is that any glucose that you need, your body can make it out of non-carbohydrate sources. Now that we got that out of the way, let's cover these 7 foods that have 0 sugar and 0 carbs. Number 1 is fat, and this would be any of the pure fats. Butter, ghee, which is a version of butter, cod liver oil, you have olive oil, coconut oil. All of the fats have 0 carbohydrates, which means they don't trigger that insulin spike. Excessive insulin is behind most chronic illness. Number 2 is any of the meats, beef, pork, lamb, chicken, fish. All of those proteins have virtually 0 sugar and carbohydrates. Any of the meat and fat is going to be good to be able to reverse the chronic illness. Number 3, organ meats. Liver is the most common one. You see, organ meats and meat are the most nutrient-dense foods that you can possibly eat. And they're virtually 0 sugar and carbs. Number 4 on the list is eggs. It's so close to 0, we can even call it a 0, and is never going to be a problem with you consuming eggs and getting too much sugar. There is 0 sugar in the whites, but most of the nutrition is in the yolk. We're talking about the active form of vitamin A. We're talking about choline, B vitamins, the trace minerals, and very important phytonutrients for the eye. Super healthy to reverse chronic disease. Number 5, shellfish. Shellfish have some carbs, okay, but it's so small. And the benefit of shellfish is huge. And I'm talking about shellfish that are wild caught. It can provide all the trace minerals in the most bioavailable way, like selenium, which tends to counter mercury. Shellfish is loaded with zinc, and zinc is so important in increasing and maintaining testosterone. And out of all the shellfish, we have oysters at the peak of all of those shellfish. Number 6, raw cheese. It's a really good source of protein. It has a lot of other nutrients in there. I always feel good when I have raw cheese. Of course, if you can find European cheese, that's better. Sheep or goat cheese is even better than some of the cow milk cheeses. Raw cheese gives you the best source of calcium. It's one of the best sources of phosphorus. It is a really good food to increase nutrients, especially vitamin K2, which, by the way, helps you keep calcium from building up in the arteries and the soft tissues. Number 7 are certain types of vegetables which have a tiny bit of carbs. Any of these vegetables I'm going to talk about will never, ever, ever, ever spike your blood sugar at all because the fiber in there is going to buffer any type of, sugar that's in there. It's just so tiny. Watercress, mushrooms, spinach, and arugula have just a tiny bit of carbs. And that includes lettuce too. Swiss chard, bok choy, kale, zucchini is another good one, celery, cucumbers. And I love cauliflower. You can bake it, you can cook it, you can add butter to it, add cheese to it. You can make mashed cauliflower delicious. Also, when you get into the herbs like pepper and thyme and sage and garlic, those are even tinier amounts, so you don't have to worry about them. I just gave you the list of foods that if you focused on those foods, you would literally reverse diabetes, chronic illness, because most illness is caused by the consumption of too many refined carbohydrates in the form of starches and sugars.